I'm so thankful that you were willing to not just make this an album for friends and family, but an album for everyone, because I've honestly even just been so blessed by the single, Thy Will. I mean, as soon as I heard it, I started crying. And then I started sending it out to friends and family. I was like, have you heard this song?
Thank you.
It's so good. And I just feel like it came from such a vulnerable place. And I'm curious if you could talk about writing a song that's so honest, and maybe even where it came from, saying that sometimes we don't get the answers we want.
Right. Well, it is definitely the most personal song I've ever written. We went over, and I had no intention to kind of go into that writing room that day and pour out my heart. And it was in a real messy place because I was just going through a really difficult time. But I did. It just felt like a safe place. And I've said this a lot, like, this is my story, but the way that this song came to be and the way we wrote it, there are just some days you go into a room and you know that you're a pass-through of a message that God really just wanted people to be able to hear. Having things that go on in your life that you think are going to be really awesome, and then all of a sudden it feels like the carpet's ripped out from under you. And because that's what, I'd prayed about something in my life and felt like God had answered that prayer, and then the way in which it was answered looked a lot differently than I thought it would. And so, of course, I was questioning and confused, and all the while knowing, though, that ultimately, even when we don't understand, His will is what's best. And it was all around those verses in Matthew, like the Lord's Prayer, and how that these verses kept coming up. And I would go to try to pray about this specific thing that happened, and it was like all I could pray was, Thy will be done. And that's what the song says, and it's exactly what I was going through. And those verses just kept coming up in the most random but not random places. It's just how He works. And I looked in the translation of the message, and where it says Thy will be done, it translates to do what's best. And in that moment, it was such an epiphany of like, okay, Your will is what's best. Even when I don't understand, even when I can't see light at the end of the tunnel, I'm holding on to these words and this truth. I'm in a very vulnerable place with this song. It's still hard to talk about even, and because it's a place that's very raw for me still. But what I've really tried to say, whether it's the couple times I performed it, like before I sing it, everyone has a story, and everybody has really high points and really low points to their story. But I think a lot of people walk around feeling like their story isn't as cool as the next person, or isn't as important. And what I've really learned is, if you take a step out in boldness to share your story and the story that God has been writing for your life, then someone else is going to respond to it, whether it's something they just went through, or maybe it's something they're about to go through. And the bond and the connection that you form with people, even complete strangers sometimes, when you take that bold step to share, even when you might think that somebody's going to look at you like you're crazy, don't be afraid to do it, because that's been the most amazing way to heal for me with what I've been through, is sharing it and hearing the response and the stories of others.